All right, so another one, huh?
Yeah, you know how it is. Another deep dive.
I actually have other things I could be doing right.
Oh, stop complaining. You know you love getting into the weeds with these legal cases.
Okay, fine, I'll bite. What do we got this time? Another corporate espionage thriller, a celebrity divorce gone wrong.
Not quite, but it does have a certain Law and Order vibe.
Ooh, intrigue. Tell me more.
We're going to be looking at Shadows over Boston.
Shadows over Boston. This sounds ominous.
Well, it is a bit heavy, yeah. It's about a young man from South Boston who's facing some pretty serious charges.
Okay, I'm officially intrigued. Lay it on me.
So we've got John Doe. He's been accused of possession with intent to distribute crack cocaine, assault with intent to murder, and a violation of a protective order.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. Sounds like someone's been a busy boy.
Yeah, you could say that. And the potential consequences are serious. We're talking a life sentence.
A life sentence. This is definitely starting to sound like a Law and Order episode. So who's our legal eagle in this story? Who's fighting for John Doe?
His defense attorney is Veronica J. White. She's known for her, well, let's just say she's not afraid to ruffle some feathers in pursuit of the truth.
I like her already. Yeah. So what's the prosecution's angle? What kind of case are they building against our boy John?
Well, their opening statement was pretty dramatic. They painted John as a real menace to society, a one-man crime wave.
Yikes. That doesn't sound good. So how does Veronica plan to counter that? What's her strategy?
Well, right off the bat, she goes after their so-called star witness.
A star witness? Don't tell me it's a jailhouse snitch or something.
No, nothing like that. It's actually a piece of evidence. A surveillance photo supposedly shows John dealing drugs near Faneuil Hall.
Come on, a blurry surveillance photo. That's their big smoking gun. I bet even I look like a criminal mastermind in those grainy security camera shots.
Well, your fashion choices aside, you do have a point. Those kinds of photos can be notoriously unreliable as evidence.
Exactly. So what does Veronica do? Does she call in an expert to analyze the photo?
She does even better than that. She points out the inconsistencies in the police report. The officer who supposedly identified John in the photo, well, his description doesn't actually match John's appearance that day.
Nice. So she's already poking holes in their story. What about the drugs and the gun they supposedly found? Surely that ties John to the scene, right?
Not so fast. Veronica points out that the evidence was found in a public area, no direct link to John, no fingerprints, no DNA, nothing concrete.
So their case is starting to look a little shaky, huh? Like a house of cards in a hurricane.
Well, they weren't giving up that easily. Remember that protective order I mentioned?
Yeah, the one from his ex-girlfriend.
Right. Well, John was wearing a GPS monitor as a condition of that order. The prosecution tried to use that against him to portray him as a danger to others.
Yeah, the classic guilty by association tactic. But I bet Veronica had a counter-move ready. She always does.
Oh, absolutely. She revealed that John's ex-girlfriend had actually moved out of state and was no longer cooperating with the authorities. The judge, seeing how flimsy their argument was, agreed to remove the GPS monitor.
Boom. Score one for the defense. But wait a minute. Wasn't this ex-girlfriend also the alleged victim in the assault case?
She was.
So if she's gone and not cooperating, doesn't that kind of torpedo the assault charge?
You're catching on quick. Without her testimony, the assault charge was starting to look as wobbly as a newborn giraffe.
Okay, so we've got a shaky photo, questionable physical evidence, a missing star witness. What else did the prosecution have up their sleeve? Did they try to pull a rabbit out of a hat?
Well, they're really banking on the arresting officer's testimony to tie John to the crime scene. But, and this is where it gets interesting, neither officer showed up in court.
You're kidding. Even the cops bailed on them. What is going on with this case? This is better than that time I convinced a parking enforcement officer I was a time traveler.
I'd appreciate it if you'd try to take this seriously. This is a serious matter, even if the prosecution's case seems to be falling apart at the seams.
Fine. But you have to admit, it's pretty entertaining to watch their carefully crafted narrative crumble like a day-old croissant. So, with the cops MIA, what happened next? What did Veronica do?
Well, seeing her chance, she did something pretty bold. Veronica, she filed a motion for dismissal.
A motion for dismissal? What's that?
Basically, she's saying, look, you guys don't even have enough evidence to put him on trial.
Oh, snap. That's got a sting for the prosecution.
Oh, I'm sure they weren't happy. But after reviewing everything, the judge actually agreed with Veronica. Case dismissed.
No way. Just like that. Talk about a plot twist.
Yep. John Doe was free to go. And it really underscores something crucial here. It's so easy to get caught up in those initial reports, the headlines. But this case really shows why it's important to dig deeper. Ask those tough questions. Don't just take things at face value.
Yeah, good point. It's a good reminder that there's always more to the story. But hey, let's not forget our boy John. What happens to him now? Is he back to his old ways, or is he a changed man?
Well, we can hope he's learned a valuable lesson from all this.
Right.
But more importantly, I think this case really highlights the importance of a strong defense, right?
Yeah,
Veronica's ability to really dissect the prosecution's case and expose those weaknesses, well, that was key to John's freedom.
absolutely. Everyone deserves a good lawyer no matter what they're accused of.
Right, exactly. It's a fundamental principle of our justice system. Innocent until proven guilty.
Preach. And let's not forget the real MVP of this whole saga, that blurry surveillance photo.
And it's still hung up on that.
I mean, come on. It's practically a character in this legal drama.
Yeah.
But it also raises an important point about evidence, right? Things aren't always as clear-cut as they seem.
Absolutely. Even something like a photo, which you'd think would be pretty straightforward, can be misleading, open to interpretation.
Right. So how can a jury even know what to believe when it comes to this kind of evidence?
That's where expert witnesses come in. They can analyze the photos, testify about their authenticity, and help the jury understand the technical aspects.
So it's a battle of the nerds. Forensic photo experts throwing down in court. Now that's something I'd pay to see.
It can get pretty intense, sure, but the point is, photographic evidence needs to be carefully scrutinized, not just taken at face value.
Okay, so we've got a solid defense, questionable evidence, but what about those vanishing witnesses? The ex-girlfriend disappears. Then the cops don't show up. It's like a witness protection program gone wild. What's the deal with that?
Well, we can speculate all day, but without more information, it's hard to say. Maybe the ex had her own reasons for not wanting to get involved. It happens.
Yeah, maybe she's off living her best life on a tropical island, sipping margaritas and forgetting this whole mess ever happened. Good for her.
Possibly. But the officer's absence, that's definitely more unusual. It does raise some questions. Were there internal pressures? Was there something else going on behind the scenes?
Intrigue. I smell a conspiracy. Okay, so runaway witnesses, missing cops, a case that's imploding. But amidst all this chaos, there's one person who has to stay calm and collected, the judge. What's going on in their head as they watch this whole thing unfold?
Well, judges are trained to be impartial, right? To focus on the law and the facts of the case. It's not about their personal opinions.
So they're like legal robots, just processing information, spitting out rulings, no emotions allowed.
Not quite robots. They're human, of course, but they have to maintain a certain level of objectivity. And in this case, the lack of evidence was pretty clear. They couldn't convict John without proving his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt.
Ah, reasonable doubt, that magical legal phrase. So the prosecution just couldn't connect the dots, huh? What happens to them now? Do they get sent back to law school for a refresher course?
Probably not. They'll likely appeal the decision, try to salvage what they can, or maybe they'll just move on to the next case, hopefully with a little more evidence this time.
Maybe they'll invest in some better surveillance cameras. Ones that can actually take a clear picture.
Now you're just being facetious.
Maybe. But seriously, this whole case is a reminder that things aren't always black and white, right? Mistakes happen, evidence can be unreliable, and innocent people can get caught in the middle.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember the human element. We're talking about real people, real lives affected by these accusations. In John's case, the stakes were incredibly high. A potential life sentence, imagine that.
Yeah, that's heavy stuff.
Ugh.
Okay, enough seriousness for a minute. Yeah, back to John. How do you think he celebrated his victory? Giant party in Saudi. A celebratory cannoli eating contest.
I doubt he's in a celebratory mood. This whole ordeal must have taken a huge psychological toll on him. The stress, the anxiety, the uncertainty. Think about it.
Yeah, you're right. It's not like you just walk out of court and everything's instantly back to normal.
Exactly. And that brings up another crucial point. What kind of support systems are in place for people like John who've been through something like this?
Ooh, good question. We're getting deep now.
Think about it. He might need therapy, counseling, help reintegrating back into society. There's a lot to process.
Right. And even though he was found innocent, there's still that stigma, that shadow of doubt that might linger.
Exactly. So it's not just about legal outcomes, but about the human impact. What can we as a society do to help people rebuild their lives after something like this?
Wow. Okay. Heavy stuff. We'll have to save that discussion for another deep dive. I'm not sure I'm emotionally prepared for this level of introspection right now.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But it is something to think about.
All right, folks, we've covered a lot of ground today. We've dissected the evidence, analyzed the legal strategy, and even gotten a little philosophical. But there's one burning question we haven't answered yet, and it's a big one.
Oh, and what question is that?
You have to wait for part 3 to find out.
Hey.
Okay, spill the beans. What's this burning question you left us with?
Well, remember how John was facing a life sentence?
Yeah, talk about dodging a bullet.
What happens after someone like John is cleared of those charges?
Oh, right. It's not like you just waltz out of the courtroom and everything's back to normal.
Precisely. He's been through a traumatic experience, facing a potential life sentence, and he's likely dealing with a lot of emotional baggage.
So, what, like PTSD?
Possibly. He might be dealing with anxiety, fear, even anger.
Yeah, I can see that. And then there's the whole social stigma thing. Even though he was found innocent, some people might still look at him differently.
Absolutely. Rebuilding trust, reintegrating back into society, that can be incredibly difficult.
So what's the answer? How do you help someone pick up the pieces after something like this?
Well, for starters, access to mental health services is crucial.
Therapy, support groups, that kind of thing.
Exactly. He needs a safe space to process what happened, to develop coping mechanisms.
Okay, makes sense. But what are the practical side of things? Like getting a job, finding a place to live. That can't be easy with this kind of accusation in your past.
You're right, there are a lot of challenges, and that's where legal aid and other support services come in.
So he could potentially sue the police or the prosecution for wrongful accusation.
It's possible, but civil lawsuits are complex, and there needs to be strong evidence of wrongdoing.
Okay, so that's a long shot. But at least there are some options for seeking accountability. So we've talked about support systems, but how do we prevent these kinds of situations from happening in the first place?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a complex issue that requires systemic change. We need to look at things like police misconduct, overzealous prosecutors, and the role of implicit bias in the justice system.
Whoa, okay, let's save that for another deep dive. That's a whole other can of worms.
Agreed. But it is an important conversation to have.
All right, folks, we've explored the ins and outs of John Doe's case, uncovered some serious flaws in the prosecution's argument, and even pondered some bigger questions about justice and accountability. What a wild ride.
I'll say, it's certainly been an enlightening discussion.
Well, you know me. I always love a good legal mystery. And who knows, maybe we'll revisit this topic down the road. But for now, let's leave our listeners with this. John Doe's case is a reminder that our justice system, while imperfect, is still striving for fairness.
And that every accusation deserves a thorough examination, a fair trial, and a strong defense.
Well said. So, dear listeners, next time you hear about a case like this, remember John Doe. Remember that there's always more to the story than what you see in the headlines.
And remember the importance of critical thinking. Don't just accept what you're told. Ask questions, demand evidence, and hold those in power accountable.
Words to live by. Until next time, folks, stay curious, stay informed, and try not to end up on the wrong side of the law or a blurry surveillance photo.
The names and certain details in this podcast have been changed to protect the privacy of the individuals involved. While the cases presented are based upon real events, certain facts may have been altered or omitted for confidentiality purposes. Each case is inspired by real legal cases defended by White & Associates PC. This podcast is intended for educational and informational purposes only and should not be construed as legal advice. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. White & Associates PC does not endorse or guarantee the accuracy or completeness of the information discussed in this episode.